it's a very hot day where I am. In the discomfort of what heat I feel, I can share it with my I am one with the universeness, people who are freezing in Northern Europe, and equalize in that spiritual energy. So literally, if you step away from the I, you share that, you feel cooler.
Well, hello and welcome. Welcome to another episode of the Finding Equilibrium show. I'm delighted to be here and delighted that you're here. And of course, delighted that my guest today is Nancy Evelyn. Nancy and I had a wonderful conversation a couple of years ago, and today's very much about continuing that conversation. So Nancy is a herbalist, an astrologer, a iridologer. I mean, so many tools you've gathered that are designed to facilitate healing. So I'm absolutely delighted to welcome you back. For people who don't know you, and of course we've got another episode where Nancy goes into a lot more detail her backstory. So I'll put that in the notes. But Nancy, for people who don't know you, I'd love you to just take a couple of moments to introduce yourself.
I'm a herbalist, iridologist, educator, astrologer, and I've been in practice since early in 1978. So I've gathered a whole lot of mileage and a whole lot of chance to add tool upon tool upon tool in my healing toolkit. And I am the founding member and principal of a group called Estuary Learning. And it's called Estuary Learning to sort of keep us a little bit under the radar, because what we do is we gather people who know a lot about ancient medicine, earth medicine. This is about natural earth medicine and medicine associated with the old ways and keeping the old ways alive until it's safe to come out and practice. So what we do is we're an education and mentoring organization. So when people go to get their ticket to practice and come out going, I haven't learned anything I wanted to learn, we go, well, or we have a new member recently who came in and said, I wondered where all the teachers went. And it was, here we are. And we are also students, but we're also members who live the life, walk the walk, know the kitchen, know that food is medicine, know the stars in the sky, follow Jupiter across, people who know the weeds in their garden and how to make a decent pesto, everything that makes a life close to earth and honors the spirit of plant medicine and energy healing. And that's what Estuary Learning is. And it's a community that goes from Perth to New Zealand and from far north Queensland to Tasmania. And thanks to modern technology, we're able to have quite an intimate community. So we are the community that happens every day, mentoring between events. That's us.
Amazing. Well, thank you for finding time to speak with us today. So maybe why don't we jump straight in, because we're in a new year. At the time of recording, we're still in January 2024, and this feels like a time of change, a time of accelerated change. We have all kinds of problems going on, all kinds of wars. I'd love you to share with us, maybe from an astrological perspective, why there is so much change, so much chaos. It feels, and everyone I speak to is feeling the challenge of going through change, going through constant change.
Well, if you think change ended last year, keep your skates on. Geez, it's moving along this year. I put it down to last March when Pluto formed a hard square with the North and South nodes. And when the North node went into Aries, with square Pluto, it was like the celebration of the time of the warlord. We had warlords. It was time of warlords. War was everywhere. And everything had a violent edge. Even on a domestic scene, it was also violent. I can't live like this anymore. and words like identity, people standing up for their identity and being smashed for doing that. And what we were looking at was, it was happening at the last degrees. It was happening at the last degrees of Capricorn, the anaretic degrees, which is like the wrecking ball of everything. We remember, cast your mind back to 2008 when Pluto entered Capricorn, we went into the global financial crisis. And that was the end of the credibility of the banks and everything that should have happened on the day. And nobody asked me, but had they asked me, I would have said, oh, IMF, it's very easy. Waive all debt, begin again. No, here we are. There's so much suffering because a year after that, Neptune went into Pisces. So we were very aware of people suffering, and we were very aware of how much everything we relied on for social cohesion was just crashing around us. So that started happening in 2008, 2009, crunched in 2023. Neptune is still in Pisces, yeah? And so there's all this there's awareness of suffering. There's a compassion for the people who are suffering in all over the world. And then we have war. Boy, do we have war. And we have reached an age where the turning point was when the Sun and Pluto just now on the what date was that? The 21st, 22nd of January. Together, the Sun and Pluto entered Aquarius. It was like, this is it. This is the turning. But I cast earlier, we were talking about when the ruler of Aquarius, Uranus, went into 0 degrees Aries. That was that, okay, we're in the Aquarian age. We're in the borderlands. We're starting to end that Piscean age of sacrifice. And we're moving into the age of Aquarius, which is the quantum, and also the age of invention, but it's the age of power to the people. Right on. You know, this is like, and coinciding with that, we have Capricorn hitting the wall. So all those structures that were proven to be corrupt, and we had royal commission after royal commission on everything from the churches to the child sexual abuse to
so many things,
nursing homes, everything, royal commission. People born in that age think that's normal, but what it was just the crashing of the old system, and the system continues to crash and find more insidious ways to control, really. But this is a time of endings and beginnings. Now we see a lot of endings, we see a lot of endings, absolutely, but but the beginnings are not really up there yet on that 3D screen. It's like a building site that's not quite out of the ground, you know, but the foundations since Uranus went into Aries, then, right, 2000, what year was that? 18?
I think, yeah, 2018, yes. Yeah.
2018. It was like that whole period. Everything started to change. Small groups came out of nowhere. Suddenly, you know how people go, the system's not working for me. And I go, no, it isn't, honey. It's not working. It's just not working. It's not that it's not working for you. It's simply not working. Try not to take it too personally.
It's interesting. I want to pick up on something that you said around we're moving into the age of the power of the people. I really love that. And I guess what goes through my mind is for the people to really take back their power or share their power or, you know, move in their power, however you want to express it, they need to be operating at a higher frequency. And there's so many things are actually happening at the moment: distractions, phones, food, you know, environmental toxins, wherever you look, you know, fear. And all of this, of course, is not doing a great good to raising frequency. But I'd love you to maybe give your perspective on why it's important that people do take this this concept of raising their own individual frequency seriously, particularly now.
Well, frequency is also a very Uranian concept. And of course, Uranus is in Taurus, so it's going to be affecting very physical bodies, beings, and Earth itself.
Mm.
So this is, we didn't mention earlier, because we've got the warlord thing happening here, but we also have climate crisis happening there, which is the Uranus and Taurus element.
Mm.
But basically, frequency on a physical level is just the rate that our cells vibrate, the rate that our molecules are sort of vibrating. So basically, the higher our frequency, the more rapid our rate of vibration, and the slower the frequency, the slower the rate of vibration. So a healthy body resonates at about 62 to 70 megahertz. And diseases are measured generally from 58 downwards. So there's a very personal reason, a very good reason personally to lift your frequency. So when we resonate at a low frequency, and everybody knows how this feels, we feel lethargic and depressed, and we feel anxious. You lose the mojo, every red light, nothing works for you, no passion. And the hardest part is this sort of feeling of, and it's always going to be that way. You lose that sense of timing of, no, it's always going to be that way.
You lose that sense of hope, don't you? Yeah.
You lose that sense of hope. In the flower remedies, you can go to something like gorse for that feeling of loss of hope, but you can go to mustard too, which is that timeless depression. I will always be this way. So it won't always be this way. And when we do tune into, say, a traffic report, peak hour traffic report, we get what we expect, right? And that's the way it is. The hard facts, three-dimensional reality, is that there is a lot of pain. And there is an expectation of more pain. Now, that is not irrational. That's not irrational at all. It is a normal response to feeling out of control in our life, right? So that is something that we will all fall into, no matter how much you know. You trip over it, and something you love is lost, taken away, no longer access, easy to slide. But when we raise our frequency, which is so doable on a micro, every day, any moment kind of way, then our energy flows and life flows, and we seem to be able to raise this magnetic energy to attract what we need for a better outcome. We're open to life, regardless of what life is.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'd also add to that when you are operating at a higher frequency, above the line, if you like, that you described, the problems seem easier to find solutions to, and because you're operating at that higher frequency. So when you're low, when your frequency is very low, of course, the tiniest problem can feel like a major issue, because you don't have the energy. I think it all comes back to energy, doesn't it? Having the capacity to be able to solve problems. And with these problems, like, we're not short of problems to solve, but I'd love to maybe move the conversation on now. And you've talked about flower remedies and some other tools, but there are so many things that people can do to increase their frequency. Sometimes I feel that people get a little bit overwhelmed by the number of things. Maybe we could talk about some of the practical things that people can do to actually lift their personal vibration, to prevent disease. You mentioned something before. We were talking about micro moments or micro meditation. I'd love you to maybe expand on that and talk about what is a micro meditation and how can people apply that?
Well, I think meditation is important however you find it, because meditation does raise the frequency, right? And when we cannot change our circumstance, we can change our frequency. We can raise our frequency. And And that's not a selfish thing, because everyone around us feels better when we do that.
Mm, mm.
Right?
It's
So then
about,
you've got a pocket of higher frequency that's also rippling out.
mm,
So what happens is, whatever form of meditation that you practice that works for you, keep going. But on top of that, or if you don't have time for that, a separate time away from the busyness of life to create stillness is to find a way that you can dip into. I think the phrase I came up with that I really like, I think it's a t-shirt that's like, punctuate your day with micro meditations. Whenever the stress tends to build up, just to find whatever it is that gives you that, you can dip right into stillness. Just dip into stillness. 30 seconds, less, 10 seconds, dip into stillness. Someone is screaming, dip into stillness, right? And it might mean things like practicing now, because the year's only going to get faster soon.
definitely. Well, it feels it's already getting faster. And that's why now is the time to build your toolkit, isn't it? Your personal toolkit, so that you can ground yourself in the moment.
So I think one of the things are to use whatever you have at hand, and that might be to pick up a guitar, but it might be to plug into a playlist, right? It might be the difference between dipping into stillness when somebody is at your face because they need something, because they're distressed, and you can just go into stillness and respond instead of react. Your whole evening is going to be better, right? I practice my little micro meditation in noisy places. I go where there's a lot of noise, because there's a lot of noise on earth at the minute, and I practice there. Happy noise, crazy noise, wherever it is, I just will find some stillness there. It's just good practice.
Yeah.
And it helps me in my astral work to go into that.
Definitely. How would you do that? Like, how do you, if you go to a really noisy place and you find stillness, how do you do that?
Okay, one place on these hot days, for instance, is to go to the beach. And if you're anywhere near a kiosk, it's noise. It's just a level of noise. And if you sit there, you can hear the ocean. You can choose to hear the ocean, or you can choose to hear, he hit me. It's a choice of what you're tuning into. And so it's that kind of thing. It's having the ability to create a kind of positive, compassionate energy when someone is in distress as well. So you go, I hear you. You don't have to say anything, because that's really an annoying thing to hear. Somebody said to me when I'm on a rampage, I hear you. I don't want to hear that. That equals be quiet. But it basically, if your attitude is, I'm listening, then you will not need to be screamed at to be heard. So there are things like that. And I can't say that all I can say is I practice. But I think that things like take a walk. Well, we mentioned this one earlier too. Take a walk. And you hear people say, walking in nature. I go, you are nature. Go take a walk. Wherever you are, take a walk. In the busyness of life, in that beautiful connectedness of life, urban life. I think that urban earth connection has the same sacredness as forest earth connection. And I think that incidental contact in the passing by in your village, which is where we're going into smaller communities in our everyday. All that big corporate stuff is big. Even in big cities, there will be groups. There are groups. There are co-ops, and when the system doesn't work, you have to do it yourself. That forms a co-op. That forms a community. That forms a purpose-fed group of people who learn to interact and look out for each other. Right? That incidental contact of walking down the street. You're walking a dog. I'm walking a dog. That I think somebody did a study with what makes stress levels and strokes and things like that. That the highest value activity in calmness and in the joy of living is the incidental friendly contact we make with strangers on the street.
Interesting. Yeah. And you can feel it, can't you? I remember during the pandemic when it was, we couldn't obviously connect in the same way with people. And I remember running and I saw this woman in her garden, and she, an elderly lady, and she waved at me. So I waved back, and it was really, it was like a moment of connection. And I think in that second, I realized how connected we are really as a humanity. We feel separate, like clearly it's a separate, but energetically we're so connected. So when we lift our frequency, then of course it impacts the group around us, but then they have their own group. So you can see how it can ripple in a much wider way.
And so that feeling of hopelessness, because individually we can't sort of affect peace at scale, we actually change the whole energy on the ground. This is people power. But back to what you were saying, go back 2 sentences, and you said connectedness, interconnectedness. If what we are doing is giving ourselves stress because of anything, say, like it's a very hot day where I am, in the discomfort of what heat I feel, I can share it with my I am one with the universeness, people who are freezing in Northern Europe, and equalize in that spiritual energy. So literally, if you step away from the I, you share that, you feel cooler.
I love that. Yeah.
It's like, I'm going to share this shower. I am sure there are people all over the world would love this shower. I'm sharing it. And so you tap into your connected spirit of being at one with. So you move into that meditation space where you are in awareness. You're stepping into awareness where everybody can feel that shower, where that temperature can be equalized, and it sounds very airy-fairy, but it is equilibrium, and it is equilibrium in consciousness.
It really is. And I think, just underline that point that it sounds airy-fairy until you start believing it and start experiencing it. And then it becomes a lot more material. And if it supports you, that's a key
It does
thing.
support you because it manifests. So what happens is if you can live there or have a micro moment, and you don't have to do anything different. You're going to have a shower anyway. There it is. Share it. And so it's the in that moment of getting what you need, sharing what you have, and on a practical level, consciously sharing what we have. Share everything we have. Whatever you have, share.
Yeah, I completely. Yeah, that act of sharing, of course, gives you that. Yeah, it pays it forward, doesn't it? And it completely comes back to you.
And it brings you joy, and it raises your frequency, and that will raise your health.
I love that. Just building on that and talking about health, because I know with your background as a herbalist for so many years that you have that deep knowledge of the natural world and the plants that really can support our health. I'd love you to maybe share some of the things, and whether it's flower essence remedies, which I know can be incredibly powerful to support people, or whether it's other herbs that can support people to find equilibrium, to find balance during these times. We said at the start that it's very important that people have their own tools that they know. So if they're feeling out of balance, out of equilibrium, which happens to all of us, and we can take we can implement our tools quickly to kind of return to balance. So it doesn't mean we have to remain at a high frequency all the time, because we are human, of course, and events will affect our frequency and bring us down. The key is that we don't stay down. I think that's the key point that I want to kind of emphasize, that there are many tools for people, and it's knowing thyself and knowing when we are energetically low, so that we can move forward.
Also allowing it to pass.
Mm.
By allowing it in, you allow it to go out. By resisting it, oh, I have to keep a high frequency all the time, you're going to create more stress.
Yes,
And that's the catch too.
definitely. I think that's a very, very good point. That allowing it in, almost feel the discomfort. I feel that in our society, perhaps we don't like to feel discomfort, so we take pills. We just want to block it out. Ignore it's actually happening, which is dangerous.
It's also dangerous for humanity, because this is how we block the news, because we do not want to see that much pain. And yet without that witness, without witnessing what is happening in humanity, because in the experience of awareness, that is us.
Mm.
And to not know that is just wrong. You cannot turn your back on what is happening in the three-dimensional. You must raise the frequency of how that expresses. So you act with compassion and work with all your tools to keep in an everyday way. So it becomes a very smooth choreography.
Definitely. And just to add to that, I think it's important. Everything's in balance. We need to know what's happening in the world, but living on a diet of news all day, of course, is not going to help us.
Right.
So it's
and
being the
being accessible by phone all day is not good. So your boundaries around that kind of accessibility, when that's where the micro moments are. So where the busyness and you're juggling and you've got all these things going, you can punctuate your day with moments of stillness, even if it's wrapping your hands around a cup of tea and just looking at that fantastic ivory curl outside my window.
Wonderful.
And that moment, of stillness. And attention to the small things in a mindfulness way, those little bugs that are the whole ecology that happens in one tree. But yes, the herbal part, I have to say, if you're near the ocean is the great equalizer, isn't it? You just get in it or walk along it or get your feet wet or breathe the air. Lavender oil is something that works brilliantly in calming the whole nervous response to life. And it's so accessible, and people generally have lavender in their garden. Lavender tea is delicious. People don't think of making tea. You can make lavender tea, you can drink it cold, you can drink it with a little bit of lemon and honey. It's up to you. It's a beautiful flavor, but you just smell it and your whole being goes, I can do this. It's very hard to sleep with the astrology that's happening at the moment, especially this full moon tonight. It's really happening, and something like lavender oil on our necks, because this is where the tension is. This is where the tension is, and if your shoulders are a little too close to your ears, basically a couple of drops of lavender oil on your neck and into the back of your head is going to relax that. You're going to sleep better. If you're having trouble connecting to spirit or remembering your dreams, knowing that everything is waking up, but just too busy to remember in the morning, do you know that kind of...
I know that feeling, yes.
Mugwort is the answer to that. So mugwort, even like I've just dried a whole batch of mugwort. Mugwort put it in a little... what do you call it? A little parcel, and hang it at your bedhead, or stick it in your pillow when you roll over. You can, and some people will find that will keep them awake. So if that's the case, use very little, because you're very sensitive. Okay. So basically, mugwort is on a plant spirit medicine. This is the great connector, mind, body, spirit. Mugwort is moxa in acupuncture, so that the energy flows. It opens meridians. It connects on all levels. So the less that you use, the stronger that medicine is. Homeopathy is my passion. I love it. I love it more. And it's sustainable to use less. And especially when less does the job. Where were we? Chamomile tea. The vagus nerve from your stomach to your head. You're too distressed to eat, or you're eating your emotions and your digestion is met. Chamomile will put this to sleep. For babies, chamomile, you know. There's also a move in I'm not a Bowen therapist, but there's an emergency move where you put your finger right on your sternum. I don't know if I can I show you this? Okay, so sternum, and you hold with one hand, and with your two fingers here, you stretch your skin up and you push it down, and your whole breath goes. Try it.
I will. Yes, I'll try it later.
Yeah. Or even things like opening your ribs, you know, like put your fingers between your intercostals and move that plate forward, open your ribs and breathe when you're not breathing. There's so many little tools in a toolkit. Like that's the emergency move. I forget its name, but it's like when in doubt, you go right there and everything, hiccups stop, choking stops, you know, all of that great tension, and the whole diaphragm opens, and it's 30 seconds.
It's easy to do. Yeah.
How do people live without medicine? I have no idea how they live without medicine. People need to support their adrenaline.
Definitely. Well, these are medicines. I know in our age of medicine, it has come to mean drugs, if you like, whereas, of course, all of these things are medicine. So when I talk about tools, I'm really talking about your medicine cabinet. You know, a walk is a medicine, lavender oil is medicine. All of these things, reading a book, playing a guitar, having a conversation, these are all forms of medicine. That if they lift your vibration, then that's a form of medicine. If they lower the vibration, then
it's not working for you.
It's not working for you. Yeah.
So one of the I've got a little list somewhere I wrote. Yes, learn to live with the people you live with. Learn to live with them.
Tell me more about that one. That's an important one, because I know in the work I do as a coach, as an astrologer, of course, relationships come up all the time as a form of stress, if you like, and joy, and it's that kind of balance. So learn to live with the people who you live with. Tell me more about that.
Well, I think it's really important in 2024 because the North Node is in Aries, South Node is in Libra. So this is about relationships and the role of the individual in a relationship. So the emphasis is about what about me? What about my needs, right? And traditionally, it's very easy to have a successful relationship if you're willing to cut yourself out of it. You know, if you're willing to sacrifice yourself to a relationship, then it's a shallow, hollow, successful relationship. And that's not going to cut it this year. This year is a year where it's all either, you know, Mars is square or the moon, or however, Pluto has just done everything it can to make it, I can't live like this anymore. And so many relationships broke on that. And so people moved freely. The trick is not to recreate the same situation with a new face. To learn to live with the people you live with and the animals that you live with.
Oh, wow. The cutest. Hello.
Learn to live with Peggy.
What's his name?
Peggy.
Peggy. Okay, cool.
Little Peggy. Whatever your circumstances are, homelessness is a big deal in Australia. I'm very serious. I'm very serious, and I shouldn't smile when I say that, but it's so easy to fix. But again, nobody asked me, so I won't tell you the solution. but it is a matter of sharing what you have. And so many people are living in conditions where they don't have enough space, and they're lounge surfing, and they're in the basement, and they're in the cupboard, and they're hanging from the rafters, and they've gone home to live with their parents. And instead of going, I blame my parents for not dying and leaving me the house, why don't you just learn to live the old way? Learn to live with the people you live with. And that can sometimes mean accepting their foibles,
Yeah.
and finding ways to cope with that, like walk out of the house.
Definitely. I think, I mean, the other thing I'll add to that is also learning to understand yourself better as well, because to live with others requires, and and as I get deeper into astrology myself, of course, I see that, you see that, you learn yourself, you learn to see yourself in a different way, and you recognize that learning to live with people also means them learning to live with you. So,
and there are, of course, dangerous situations that you should not be living in.
Of course.
Given. That is a given, right? If you are in a situation that is not in any way to your benefit, get out of there, and get out of there fast. Better that you should lounge surf on somebody else's place and learn to live with them. But wherever we are in space, we are needing to learn to live with the people we live with.
Just emphasizing that point, in a kind of balanced way, in a kind of in a normal situation,
in a way that creates a harmony rather than a disharmony.
Yes.
So I went through the list with somebody I work with. We went people, plants, animals, bugs.
Yes.
And then it was added mothers. Everybody. Yes. Learn to share what you have. Learn to live with less, because there will be less.
There will, but we actually have a lot. I want to go back and say, like something you mentioned before about when you're having a shower, something we all do every day, multiple times a day in many cases. It's something we do, but we don't recognize that many people would love that shower. It's a very interesting point that when we travel, when we go, when we camp and those types of things, we appreciate some of the comforts that we actually have. But I think it's a very important point, because in the moment, if you could remind yourself of that, it really has an enormous impact on your own well-being in that moment.
And it's actually a reality that spiritually we are one. That is a reality. And if you can live on that, what you need comes to you. And also what we want is not always what we need.
No. I feel we're coming to the end of our time, but one point that is coming through in my mind, because it really depends on where you focus your energy, and it does come back to finding balance. We are living in the age of war, the age of warlords. The pace of change is getting faster and faster, and will continue to do so. Old systems are falling apart, and that's discomfort. It's uncomfortable for people, because even though some of these systems may not have served everyone's interests that well, we don't know what's to follow. We don't know what's actually come in. But in the conversation we've had, it does come down to community, to connection, and all the things that drive that: sharing, feeling connected to that wider life force, not just people, but animals and other forms of nature. And there are lots of things that we can do, which I find incredibly empowering. So, and that's a key point in terms of, if you actually do take back power, then you feel empowered, you feel stronger, and therefore the challenges do not feel as great as perhaps they do if you're not feeling strong in your body and in your mind.
I think fear is a factor, because we don't know. So we know what's ending, but we don't know exactly what's beginning. But we know that there are themes, and the themes are community, and people are sick of that already.
Mm,
Um, but the concept of community as a not as a corporate takeover of the word, but a real grassroots. There is a need, and here we are, people who are here on the scene, doing something about what we need here on the scene. Um,
mm,
so we know that that's an element of it, and this has been happening and building over the last 6 years. And just as I said, we can't see it, maybe just starting to show that they're there, that they
mm,
exist. Well, like estuary learning is one of those, right? So,
mm,
um, but it's also things like the remedies, for instance, in the flower remedies that deal with fear. They're quite specific remedies for fear. So if you have fear of the unknown, you can start thinking of aspen and anxiety and supporting adrenal function, because if your adrenal functions, cortisol is up, everything is, you're sick.
mm.
Your whole immune system is down. And people don't realize that licorice, real licorice, beautiful licorice, powdered licorice, I can put the tiniest bit, maybe even just like a pinch of licorice powder in with my dandelion coffee. Delicious, just delicious.
Wonderful.
And even I have one of my favorite drinks is freshly ground coffee, dandelion coffee, and a pinch of licorice. And I've got everything from the power food that is a beautiful coffee bean all the way through to kidney, liver support, and adrenal. Yeah,
Amazing. Amazing.
wonderful. Fear of the known. You know what's going to happen and you're afraid. Mimulus for the freeze.
Mm.
Uh, fight, flight, or freeze.
Freeze, yeah.
Flight. Um, Witch rose, rock rose, is for flight, that feeling of when in panic, when in doubt, run in circles, scream and shout. Rock rose is the energy that goes, be very still. Just put your roots here and hang out over the edge. You'll be fine.
Mm,
And it's just that beautiful little yellow rose that has enough security coming out of a rock. Yeah,
mm,
it's a beautiful energy. And so we are in an age of manifesting. When you are in that time, when you are in that space of your being, and this is the Aquarian age, this is the Aquarian energy, this is Pluto in Aquarius on a personal level, and we have not mentioned technology because it'll be under the scrutiny for sure. As much as there's going to be great technology and people are very technophobe at the moment,
mm,
I ask myself this: could I make friends with a synth? And the answer is yes. If a little humanoid android came up to me and said, Nancy, would you like a cup of tea? I would say, yes, dear, I would love to. Thank you. Sit here and have a chat with me. And as the human species shifts into, I've got a new name for that. I call it, I think that Homo sapien, the wise guy, is his time's over. Could never live in his environment, always felt he needed to change it.
mm.
I think that species will morph into Homo plastica.
Right. Interesting. What do you mean by that?
I mean,
Homoplastic.
if you can't digest plastic, we don't have a whole lot of hope.
Interesting. Interesting. Nancy, unfortunately, we're coming to our end. I feel
Yeah.
we're just scratching the surface. But I know you're organizing a conference in a couple of months, and I'd love you to just share some of the details about that, because that's an opportunity for people to, come together and discuss these ideas, these concepts in a much deeper way.
Yes, we have a weekend on the 23rd and 4th of March in Peabury Place, which is a beautiful function centre in Wickham, right on the harbour, in Newcastle. And we have panel discussions, and one of the panel discussions is called Raising the Frequency. And we have everyone from homeopaths to Reiki people to in a panel discussion with technique. And we also have a panel discussion on the nervous system and how to hold that nervous system in times of change. The theme this year is called ancient medicine for changing times.
Wonderful.
We have workshops on cyclical living, which is about living in harmony with your menstrual cycle, minimizing stress by maximizing cycle alignment. Tissue salts, we're going to be talking about weeds in the kitchen and food is medicine and why traditional foods are medicine. And that's fun. It's all fun. My particular bit is on the definitive wound, which is a path that really takes us spiritually through life. It's usually formed by that first wound, you know?
Absolutely. It
That's
sounds amazing. How can people find out more about
www.estuarylearning.org.au.
Amazing. Okay, well, I'll put that in the show notes as well. So, Nancy, thank you so much for your time and for your wisdom. Let me acknowledge you for like all that you do, and we'll definitely have a part 3 at some point because there's so much to talk about.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you. Is there any final words that you have for people before we let you go?
These are scary times. Keep your frequency up. Keep your hope up. I think basically compassion. Oh, I know what to end it with. There's a good ending. The doggy is barking. Not to sacrifice ourselves, but to dedicate ourselves.
I love that. I love that. Nancy, thank you so much. And you have a wonderful day. And thank you everyone for listening and for your attention. And we'll see you again very soon.